As a supplementary topic, I wanted to go in more depth about the distinction between rescue and abduction, both willing and unwilling. So there's a comparison that I'm going to make here of three types of male female interactions where one character is carrying the other away in his or her arms. In the leftmost scene, we actually have Eos carrying away Kephalos, and it's from a bronze mirror that was found in Vulci in the early 5th century BC. So it dates from the early 5th century BC, and it's currently kept at the Vatican Etruscan Museum, or the Gregorian Etruscan Museum in Rome. The scholar Nigel Spivey comments on this particular Etruscan mirror, and he observes that there is a consistent collection of such sexy tales on these bronze mirrors, including the winged Eos, who likes to swoop upon well favored boys such as Kephalos and have her way with them, in Spivey's words. So, this particular work of art is very useful for a comparative analysis with the abduction scene on the Caertan Hydria, where Ravan carries Sita away unwillingly, and also the Campana plaque where Rama carries his wife Sita back to Ayodhya in a rescue scene. So, in this Etruscan mirror from Vulci, the winged goddess Eos moves swiftly with Kephalos cradled in her arms in what I would classify as a willing abduction. In the Campana plaque, Rama is also shown with wings, but he is carrying his wife carefully while lifting his right leg and facing in the same direction that he is moving. Rama is not running away from anyone or doing anything wrong that would attract attention, like Eos. He is free of any guilt because he is rescuing his wife, not abducting her. In the case of the winged Eos, she is abducting the hunter Kephalos to make him her husband, and she looks at him longingly while fleeing in the opposite direction from which she is facing him. She faces right towards him and then moves with long strides to the left in a kind of a guilty way. So in Rama's rescue of his wife Sita, her body or torso is completely covered, in sharp contrast to both abduction scenes. Rama does cradle Sita like a baby in his arms in a similar manner to what Eos does with Kephalos, but Rama's intentions are clearly virtuous and Eos's intentions are scandalous. Lust is the primary motive for Eos, which is represented by her facial expression, whereas faithful duty is the primary motive for Rama, clearly seen in his facial expression on the Campana panel. So you can see kind of the naughty expression on the face of Eos and the more serene expression on the face of Rama. And also, in addition, Ravan, his erect penis in the Hydria, indicates that lust was his main motive too. So lust is the main motive of both Eos and Ravan in their abductions. Now, for the last scene of Ravan and Sita, I would characterize the interaction between those two as an unwilling abduction depicted in two parts. In this second part that you can see on this slide, Ravan is carrying Sita away with long strides, much like Eos carries Kephalos on the bronze mirror. But there are two important differences to note, and this is critical. The left arm of Sita is hidden behind Ravan's monstrous form, and Ravan is holding her tightly around the waist with his right arm. In contrast, the arms of Kephalos are both visible, and Eos is not holding his torso in a violent way. So even though both Sita and Kephalos each have one arm dangling downward in a similar way, The distinction is obvious when we see his other arm and hand on the shoulder of Eos, indicating his willingness to be abducted. No such sign from Sita is present on the Caertan Hydria. To the contrary, she clearly resists the demon Ravan in the first part of the abduction, as we have discussed earlier. In the second part, which you can see here, Ravan has to maintain violent control over Sita by wrapping his arm around her torso, which indicates her continued unwillingness to be abducted. Therefore, we can conclude that the willing abduction of Kephalos by Eos shares certain iconographic features with the rescue of Sita by Rama and the unwilling abduction of Sita by Ravan, but all three scenes have unique features that distinguish them as well. The category of willing abduction should be placed between unwilling abduction and rescue in the imaginary mythological spectrum of male-female interactions. Increasingly toxic on the left and increasingly benign on the right. Also, just as an additional point, Hemmelrich noted the marks of distress or pain on the fingers of Sita's dangling right hand when Ravan is carrying her off to Lanka on the Caertan vase, which logically transitions from the closed fist of resistance in her left hand in the adjacent scene on the Hydria, where Ravan is in the process of gaining control over Sita. Her resistance and struggle against Ravan is thus emphasized in both scenes. So just to summarize the main points that I wanted to make in this slide, the willing abduction of Kephalos by Eos on the bronze mirror that you see on the left differs from the unwilling abduction of Sita by Ravan, which you see in the middle, in two important respects. There's no arm around the waist of Kephalos, meaning that there's no violent force that Eos is applying to carry him away and keep him in her grasp. And both arms of Kephalos are visible, with one resting on the shoulder of Eos. And that is in contrast to the scene in which Ravan is carrying Sita away. Because if you look at that one, you can only see one of Sita's arms. And the other one is invisible behind his monstrous form. And I think that that was intentional by the artist to indicate that Ravan was abducting her unwillingly in a way that made her feel very small and insignificant and powerless. Sita's invisible left arm also indicates that she wants no part of Ravan. She does not want to touch him or have anything to do with him. And I think that's another reason why the artist chose not to indicate that it was even visible. Because I think she just was clearly resisting him even there, but not in a very active way, but more in a passive way in the second scene. So in the first scene where she tries to resist the abduction, her left arm is clenched with a fist, indicating more active resistance. But here it's more passive resistance because she's given up in some sense, but she's also unwilling to really touch Ravan. And that's why Ravan has to keep her, tightly wrapped with his right arm around her waist. Or otherwise she'll just, be out of his grasp again. So now that we've compared the willing abduction of Kephalos by Eos and the unwilling abduction of Sita by Ravan on the Caertan Hydria, I want to again make the second major point where we compare the Campana panel to the bronze mirror, where Eos is abducting Kephalos. The rescue of Sita by Rama shares the features of winged flight with Eos, but he is facing the same direction in which he is striding, unlike the guilty Eos in the bronze mirror, who looks back at Kephalos while striding like Ravan. So you can see the similarities and differences between all three works of art. And you can definitely distinguish the rescue from the willing abduction, as well as the willing abduction from the unwilling abduction. And we've already compared the rescue of Sita compared to the abduction of Sita on previous slides. Finally, I just wanted to display a humorous scene which comes from a still from a modern cartoon called Sita Sings the Blues by Nina Paley. And even though this cartoon is controversial in some ways, it can be useful, again, for comparing different depictions, especially in the West, of Rama and Sita interacting with one another. And if you compare it to the Campana panel, you can see some similarities where Sita is feeling very comfortable in the arms of her husband in both scenes. And she's, staring at him lovingly. And also, you can notice that her body parts are also basically concealed except for her two tiny hands in the modern cartoon still here. So it's kind of funny in some ways to just see the modern depictions as well and how they can compare favorably to the ancient depictions.